Welcome to day 213 of TFIF 365. And today I want to talk about a concept that many people struggle with, and it's relative privilege. So when we talk about privilege, it's a simple word, it's about who has access, right? Um, and so people get really triggered by this word, and I don't, well, I get it. I get it because if you don't understand that every system, institution, and policy has been designed to privilege you at the expense of the many, to privilege the few, you particularly at the expense of the many, you would um I guess, take offense to when people talk about privilege because you don't see that you have privilege. It's like I don't know how fish feel about water, if they even know they're in water, but that's the saying people talk about. It's like being a fish in water. You don't know it's there. I don't have the consciousness of a fish to know if they understand what it means to be in water, but it's that same concept kind of thing. When you're in it, you don't know. Just like when you're in it, you grow up in a family that kayaks. That's what they do every summer. And then you go away somewhere or you meet people who've never kayaked and it's just a whole different experience. Or you bring them with you on a family trip and they've never kayaked and it's a whole different experience. For you, it's normal, right? For them, it's like, wow. And so that's just what the privilege is. What were you privileged with? What things that you have access to that other people may not have had access to? And we all need to recognize that we have relative privilege. As a Black woman in the US, there are some privileges I do not have. I have never experienced the freedom of the US democracy. Never, ever, ever. So when people, particularly white men, talk about fighting for the democracy, traditionally what we fought for is their freedoms, their democracy, not my own, because um there are countless examples of um, systems, institutions, and policies that are created to ensure that I cannot fully participate in the democracy. Either that's voting, not having access to vote, and then once we quote unquote got access to vote, all the rules and policies that were put into place to ensure that we couldn't vote, like poll taxes and lynching people and all kinds of stuff with Jim Crow. And so we need to understand that each of us have relative privileges. So although as a Black woman in the US, I don't have the privilege of a true democracy, I do have privileges when I go into certain spaces as a professional. When I was teaching, I had the privilege of being the teacher where there was a student. We have to admit, there was a power imbalance there, a necessary one for classroom management. And I tried to figure out ways to ensure that there was not the supremacy element at times, and to actually develop my own um, classroom management style so that my students did feel safe, that they felt worthy, that they felt that they could empower themselves and they could motivate themselves um, in that way. But even in that, understood my relative privilege. Same thing, I've talked about this before when I had an assistant. She is like my little sister, but I would never put her in a situation where her no could be used against her, which means, by that I mean, if she told me no, that it wouldn't be something I could weaponize against her in that moment or in the future, because there was a relative privilege that I had. We were not equals because I was paying her. And that's something that people really screw up. So specifically when we talk about, I was having an exchange recently about the LGBTQA plus community and how when good white folks come into those spaces, if you prioritize your whiteness, those Black, brown, those people in that space who are more marginalized than you ignore your marginalization because they are under attack and they have to protect themselves. So whether you are trans, lesbian, bisexual, queer, whatever term you use, if you come in with your whiteness and making demands because whiteness is always centered, you are inflicting harm, and those individuals who do not have white privilege have a right to protect themselves. And if that means excluding you, then that's what happens. You can't now scream about you're a lesbian or you're a trans person when you've come in and behaved in ways that are rooted in white supremacy. That's just not going to happen. And so that's what we need to understand. Another example is people who understand how to build technology and how they could be quite condescending to people who want to only use technology. Why the hell do I have to understand how this shit is made when I bought it to solve a problem? I don't need to know how the fuck it's made unless that's something I choose to. But don't tell me it's my fault when you've designed it and did not consider a larger swath of your potential users, when you only thought about users who look and live like you, and then your product or service begins to hurt people, but now it's the user's fault. No, 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 no. You did not ask the important question, what am I missing? You did not calculate your relative privilege when creating that technology solution that people thought they acquired, either they paid for or not, but they're using to solve a problem, even if that's to entertain them. So that's something I really want people to, as we talk about coalition building, as we talk about community building, as we talk about solidarity, those are the things that break down those coalitions. When you cannot recognize, own up to, take accountability for where you sit in relative privilege, you will inflict harm on those people who you seek to align yourself with, who you seek to have community with to protect yourself. Do you see what I'm saying? You can't be protected in those spaces because then now they have to put you out. So think about where your relative privileges are and act accordingly. Own them, take responsibility for them, allow yourself to be held accountable when you're called out about your shit. But we all have relative privileges. So just something to think about. Until tomorrow, peace. Become a sustaining supporter of my work at kimcreighton.com/support-the-work.